welcome to Arts Express. This is Prairie Miller, and on the show, Pacifica host Garland Nixon on Deciphering Donald, pretty much declaring war on reality.
Hello, Garland Nixon here, and I am, as you can probably tell, I'm on the road. I'm on the road again. Not exactly Patrick Lancaster on the front lines, although I did see a road rage driver. Does that count? I guess not. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here. And so let's talk about this business about a crumbling empire that's kind of pretty much declaring war on reality. So one of the terms that has been used recently is, oh no, this might slide into a world war. Of course, Trump, when he was running as the peace candidate, so the peace candidate said, so the old peace candidate there, when he was running, said, look, Biden et al. Is, I'm paraphrasing, could be drag us into World War III, the issues of World War III. I'm concerned that we don't want to get into World War III, right? And the discussion was the conventional view of World War III, right? Where a bunch of countries all get together. All right, so the old peace candidate, when he was talking about World War III, it was conventional, right? It was the thought of World War I, which was, and if you think about this, I guess it's important to think about. World War I, where there weren't as many, where they didn't have tanks, right? The tank was actually invented during World War I in Great Britain. And the reason it was called a tank was because the code name for the company where they made them was a water tank factory. They said they were making water tanks, and they were actually making this crude tank. They started off with these biplanes where they would fly over and literally drop like a brick out or a bomb, whatever, on the enemy. So what did they do? They lined up in trenches and faced each other, right? So that was the traditional warfare. They still were pulling cannons and stuff around and artillery around with horses. World War II, what do? You get an upgrade in the military hardware, so you still have armies facing each other, and more traditional warfare, right? But Trump talking about preventing World War, what he was talking about preventing was the traditional view of World War, right? Which, may I add, always England, Germany, France. If you're going to have a world war, those three bastards are going to be right in the center of starting it every single time. So if you think about it, it wasn't really a world war, was it? It was England, Germany, and France up to their bull crap again. And right now, may I ask, we go outside the U.S. and we look at who's stirring up all this trouble in Europe. Who's at the forefront of it? Starmer, Macron, and whether it's Merz or Schultz or whoever, it's always the same three countries. When you want a world war, if you're going to have a world war, those three countries are there. The ruling elite of those three countries are always going to be at the forefront of it. So one could argue that if you look at the rotten heart of the European ruling elite, that those are realistically, if the European ruling elite, for whatever reason, weren't around, probably wouldn't have a lot of trouble with World War. With the first two world wars, sure as hell wouldn't happen, would they? But maybe they would have. I don't know, because the United States is a branch of that ruling elite. It is a branch off of the tree of the ruling elite of Europe. So they're a pain in the ass too. Anyway, let us continue. So while Trump said we don't want World War III and everything will be obliterated, right? As I said with Donald Trump, a lot of people have been saying that this more and more. Do not pay any attention to what he says. Pay attention to what he does, because he will tell you one thing, but his actions will produce a different outcome. And as I've been saying recently, people take his words to mean, okay, that's indicating his intentions. They like people think that if I say I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that, that's my intentions. And I say, when it comes to Trump and most politicians, look at the outcome. Look at their outcome. The intentions are the outcome, right? I don't care what they said they wanted to produce. Look at what they produced. That is the intentions. Think about a company with these gigantic machines, and you put pineapples in its machines and water and sugar and all of that, and labels that say Del Monte pineapple. And if you stand at the end of the line of that machine, what comes out is a a can of pineapples that says Del Monte pineapples, right? That's what that machine produces. That's what that whole factory produces. Based on the ingredients and the machinery, that's all you're going to get out of that factory is cans of Del Monte pineapples. That's what it produces. Somebody can say we intended to produce, I don't know, cans of chicken noodle soup, but that ain't what it does. It produces that. The outcome of that factory lets you know what if you knew nothing. If somebody said there's a factory over there, what does it produce? And you said, I don't know, let's go to the end of the assembly line. And you got to the end of the assembly line and you looked and you saw out popping, look at this, 10,000 cans of Del Monte pineapples an hour. I know what it produces. Why? Because I stood at the end and saw what came out. You could stand at the beginning and somebody could tell you anything in the world. Bags of popcorn. Sure. That ain't going to tell you anything. And you get to the end and you say, well, they were lying to me. The only thing that's coming out is Del Monte, right? That's the way you have to deal with politicians. And that is what comes out in the end. The outcome is the intention. Screw the verbiage that they use. Look at what they put out. And then what do we have now? Donald Trump came in with the peace candidate. Forget all that. Who cares about it? We have a country right now that is crumbling in every way, shape, or form, right? Let's start here. Right now, the United States, and I said this under Biden, but it has continued, if not it deteriorated under Trump to some extent. I said, we've gotten, under Biden, I said, we got the worst relations with other countries that we've ever had. Under Biden, I said, we've got the worst relations with in the Middle East, throughout the Middle East, the worst relations with Russia, the worst relations with China, all that stuff that we've ever had, North Korea. Now Trump comes back and he's arguing, he's trying to pretend that he wants good relations with Russia, but he really hasn't produced anything yet, but a lot of talk, number one. And number two, our relations with the Middle East just Iran continue to deteriorate. Our relationships with China continuing to deteriorate, continually on the same track as before. So what is being produced by Donald Trump is similar to what was being produced by Joe Biden. He said something totally different, but let's not forget when Joe Biden ran, he made a bunch of promises. And when he got in office, every single word out of his mouth when he was campaigning was a lie. And so far, I don't know what's going to happen with Trump. I'm not ready to predict anything. So far, we gotten the same ingredients from Donald Trump, the peace candidate, all these other things that he said he was going to do. Oh, we've got to do something about the deficit. Well, now they put in a bill that increases the deficit by $154 million. So I got to fire all of these employees, and people like me were saying, hey man, these are working class people. And what did I say? What are they going to do? Why fire him? Well, we got to save money, but you're going to increase the Pentagon budget by more than you save firing these people. So why not just keep the people? If you're going to spend money, give it to the working class people. Why give more to the Pentagon budget? Now, what have they done? They're firing all these federal employees and they're increasing the Pentagon budget by more than they saved, quote, saved, firing all of these working class employees. And all this talk about saving money, $154 million more than Biden spent. That's what Trump's doing. He is increasing the deficit. All this screaming about Biden's crazy, we're going to go broke. He's increasing the deficit. He can tell me what all he said. I'll judge him by the outcome. The intention was the outcome. Trump's intention right now, based on the outcome, was to do all the things that he's doing. And that's where we are. So what do we have? Let's start here. Politically speaking, we have two presidents in a row who have absolutely, based on where we are now with Donald Trump and based on 4 years, judging Trump 3 months in, we have two presidents who ran and everything they said to the people were a lie. Every single word out of their mouth so far was a lie, with few exceptions, few little things here and there. But for the most part, didn't Donald Trump say, and that's political, that is political instability. What are the people, if we should survive till 2028, what are the people to think, who are they to vote for? The people in America, when hopefully they've all figured out somebody's going to come out of nowhere. I guess maybe it'll be Gavin Newsom, or it'll be what's his name, JD Vance. And they're going to run and say some things. And everybody who's got a friggin' brain in their head will know that every word out of their mouth will be a lie. That they're going to say, I'm going to do this, this, and that. And they're going to come in and they're going to increase. If we aren't completely in a depression by then, what looks more and more likely, they're going to increase spending. They're going to screw over the working class, and they're just going to start more wars, and they're going to be Zionist puppets. That's what we get every 4 years. We get a bunch of lies, and then we get the same thing. So politically, this country is crumbling politically. We're getting to what happens in 4 years when everybody's told to go vote, and they're like, there's nothing to vote for. Whoever I vote for, I know what I get every time. Politically speaking, we don't have like somebody that the people like or trust or could. I don't care if you or I, and people, and we said all the things that we want, and people were like, hey, Garland's running. That's great. I like everything he says. Who trusts me? They'd be like, but so did Biden. And then so did the peace candidate. They all told me all these things, and they didn't keep any of their words. And if somebody said, should I trust you, Garland? I'd say, no. You'd be crazy to trust anybody. You've been lied to. We have political instability. We don't have a democracy. Forget that. Is it a democracy if every 4 years, whoever wins, the other person says it was, the other party's going to say it was stolen, and half the time they are right? Is it a democracy if everybody knows most of the time the person that gets the most money will win? Or look what happened with the Democrats. They got like $1.5 billion and just threw it away and squandered it. They laundered it. The Democrats treated the money that Kamala Harris got the same way they treated the money that went to Ukraine. Squandered and laundered. That's all they do. Launder and squander. It goes to their friends. It goes to their buddies. It goes to themselves, their families, etc. So that's the same thing that happened. And you know what? What do you think? Trump, these people going to do something different? The other day, you probably know the hot mic where Trump's talking and they're talking about how much money they made when the market went back up. So what happened? The market crashes. And I've said this over and over. This is what happens. This is the way our financialized economy works, right? What happened in 2008? The market crashed and went down to like 6,000. Real estate of assets went down to nothing. The people that were rich came in and bought it all at fire sale prices. And then when the value went back up, they made all the money. Now they own the assets. What happened during the COVID, when they did the COVID lockdowns and everything, right? The asset prices went down to nothing. Everything went down to nothing. The people who were rich bought it all up. When it came back up, they were rich. What happened the other day? What was Trump and his people bragging about? Hey, guess what happened? Joe Blow over there made $2.5 billion in it. This guy made. So what happens? Your 401k goes to hell and you lose everything. And they come in and buy up at Fireside. So again, what was it? It was a massive transfer of wealth. The little guy who's got some money in the stock market in various funds, those funds go to hell. These guys come in and they buy everything that's gone to hell. And when it goes back up even a little bit, they bought it at fire sale prices. They make billions. One guy here, two guys here, a few billionaires. So we have a country where nobody trusts the electoral system, and it doesn't matter if they trust it, because every 4 years we're going to get some person who's going to run, and every word out of their mouth is going to be a lie. And then they're just going to come in and they're going to be a Zionist puppet, and they're going to look for more war. And then they're going to tell us about what they got to do. We got to bring jobs back. Does anybody believe Trump's tariffs? They give you a lie, so you will support that. And here's the problem for you. You ain't even going to get none of it.
And now on Arts Express.
What do these things want, and why are they here?
You still don't get it, do you, boy?
They have recruited the rich and the powerful.
They're running the whole show.
Wake up! They're all about you, all around you. Blinded us to the truth.
Take a look.
They are safe as long as they are not discovered.
I don't know what they are or where they came from, but we gotta stop them. Stay away from me. Put these on. They have us. Look at them. They're everywhere. Our only
We have no other choice.
I don't like this one bit.
Leave it alone, man. It ain't none of my business, ain't none of yours.
We have been lulled into a trance.
Listen to what I'm saying to you. We're in trouble. The whole world's in trouble. Control us! You're sending some kind of signals out of TV sets.
I've got one that can see.
Mama don't like tattletale.
Now we start spilling some blood.
Let's go!
But
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
On the show this week, we're taking a look at the convergence of two critical dates this Wednesday, the 50th anniversary of the fall of Saigon and the Vietnam defeat of U.S. imperialism, and May Day Eve, with May Day here, and really how that mass worker uprising originated in this country in 1886, but never acknowledged here, and how those two events are manifested in our collective cultural experience. And what you just heard were scenes from John Carpenter's They Live, a political uprising thriller in which the late Roddy Piper and Keith David together rise up to free humanity from fascism, playing out in 1988, but could just as well be today, where nothing much has changed. And Keith David is our guest on the show, taking a look at his latest film, the animated feature Sneaks, connecting sneakers to inner city youth identity, and David as an older, wiser, worn-out pair known as OG. David will also revisit his portrayal that has meant the most to him as a soldier in Oliver Stone's anti-Vietnam War classic, Platoon. First, some scenes from Platoon, then Keith David on Sneakers and Platoon.
We've been kicking other people's asses for so long, I figure it's time we got ours kicked. What happened today is just the beginning. We're gonna lose this war.
If you're gonna get killed in the now, it's better to get it in the first few weeks. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm so tired. I think I've made a big mistake coming here.
We're going back into that NBA bunker complex tomorrow.
Skook's a lot smarter than you think.
well, there's the beast. He hungry tonight.
Shut up! Take the pain!
You don't sleep on no ambush.
Lieutenant! What, did you do something?
What are you talking about? Oh, you lie! I took it down, he said! Burn!
You didn't know what I'm talking about.
No, I don't.
You ain't a firing squad, you piece of...
Sometimes I just look at a guy, and I know this fella's not gonna make it.
You ain't no other people in there with your bombing!
Maybe I finally found it, way down here in the mud. Maybe from down here I can start up again, be something I can be proud of.
He's a human being, man!
The stars. There's no right or wrong in them. They're just there.
I don't know, brothers, but I'm hurting real bad inside.
Death? Well, you all know about death. Everybody gotta die sometime.
All you got to do is make it out of here.
Hell is the impossibility of reason.
In 1967, Oliver Stone was a combat infantryman in Vietnam. During his tour, he received a Bronze Star for gallantry. 10 years later, in Hollywood, he was picking up an Oscar for the screenplay of Midnight Express. Now he has another story to tell, a movie that grew out of his own experience. Stone has come a long way from Vietnam, but he has not left it behind. The first real casualty of war is innocence. The first real movie about the war in Vietnam is Platoon.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Keith David, and welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, how did you conceive or flesh out your Sneakers character, OG, original gangster, based on any of your own thoughts about what OGs are all about?
I think that, you just have to live long enough and then they think you're an OG, And, it's a matter of timing. They don't say that if you're 17 years old.
And what are your thoughts about how sneakers are so tied in with a sense of identity and hope for youth, whether on or off screen with this movie?
Well, so much of the activities of our youth, whether we played, I played Little League Baseball, or you play basketball, especially if you play basketball, or any other sports. Your shoes are important. Yeah. You gotta have the right shoe, and the right sneaker is imperative. It's just like what happens in the movie. You need to have a good fit. You want to have the right fit. You want them to look good. You want them to feel good. And when you come across that, you stick with it. And it doesn't matter how up in price it goes. When they feel that good, you just want to stick with what works.
And as someone born in Harlem and growing up in New York, what can you say about how this film is a uniquely New York film and that captures a sense of New York City?
I love the way the L is throughout the movie. You can see the elevated trains. You could see I used to wonder how did those sneakers get up on that wire and just hanging up there, and you see that throughout the film. That's a very New York, Manhattan thing to have happen. I'm sure it happened in Queens too, but I remember it more in Manhattan and Harlem. But some of the places that they mentioned. If you know New York, you'll see as the camera pans past some storefronts. That's a New York street. You know that. So that was that was a nice thing to behold.
And what was it about Sneaks, this film, and the story that got you on board?
Ultimately, it's about community. It's about perseverance. It's about forgiveness. And those values are timeless. Those are something that it's multi-generational. And this is a new way of, reprising those values, reiterating those values.
And I wanted to ask you, With the 50th anniversary of the fall of Saigon this month, what are your thoughts looking back on having been part of Platoon, about one of your first films, and having been directed by Oliver Stone?
We just had our 40th anniversary, and we got together in Arizona and shared a meal. We got to see the film again, and we also got to see the making of Platoon. Paul Sanchez did a really wonderful job in doing a documentary. I think it's called Band of Brothers, and how we how we all felt about making that movie, and it certainly changed my life. I mean, my life was significantly different after Platoon, and it brought back a flood of memories, including, what life was like back here, stateside, while the war was going on, and what we were being told and what we were not being told, and how the whole situation was politicized, and how it continues to be.
You said that it changed the course of the rest of your life. You mean as an actor?
Yes, as an actor, my first film was The Thing, and I thought, oh well, I got honorable mention. I think I may have a life in the movies. And I didn't work again for 4 years in the movies. And my first film after The Thing was Platoon. But since Platoon, I've made at least one movie a year since then.
Yeah. And what does it mean to you to enact the voice of Frederick Douglass in the upcoming The Gettysburg Address? And as the fourth time, you're portraying him also in God in America, The North Star, and Not for Ourselves Alone.
Well, Frederick Douglass continues to fascinate me. I think that the story of Frederick Douglass, to me, is the story of the Second American Revolution. And the story has still not been told in its fullness. I hope one day to be able to tell it more fully. But I mean, he's one of our most important Americans, if not, he's the most important American. But he's certainly, one of the most important Americans of our time, in our history. And everybody should know who he is and what he stood for. And if he were to make a speech today, you would think that he was that he were around right now, because all of his speeches speak to exactly what's happening now. I won't. Well, never mind. I won't go there. I was gonna make a. Never mind. Let's move on, please.
Okay. Yeah, I think I know where you were going.
You know where I was going with that, but.
And what did you mean by we haven't heard the full story?
Well, because especially what he's trying to do now, and reshape and reorganize, certainly American history, and especially as it pertains to black people. There's a lot about Frederick Douglass that we don't know. There are those, few things, ambassador to Haiti, advisor to Lincoln. We know some of those things. But there are other things that you don't know about him. Like, he was the first man, black, white, or otherwise, to speak up for women's suffrage and for women's rights.
And what do you see as Sneaks conveying to black youth today, even if it's a comedy?
There's a lot of things that can be conveyed through comedy. As I said earlier, the values of community and forgiveness. These things are iterated and demonstrated in this movie. And you'll see the value of friendship, the value of coming forth and being honest and telling the truth about yourself and what you've discovered about yourself and how that can in turn help somebody else. Those things are important. And I think that if you're listening with a discerning eye, you'll get that.
And how do you relate to Edson in the film and his determination as an athlete with your passion to become an actor yourself in your own youth, no matter what?
Well, I mean, I'm going to equate that with what I call a burning desire. You have to follow the dictates of your own heart. And he wants to be an athlete. So, I mean, that burning desire made him ultimately go and play with bad sneakers because he wanted to play so badly, and he wanted to win. But it just shows to you that within the scope of that determination, you need the right equipment. And if you persevere hard enough, it will come to you. That which is yours and is for you will come to you. Once God is for you, nothing can stand against you.
Okay, thank you so much, Keith David, for joining us on the show.
You're so welcome.
Coming up next on the show, Arts Express Paris correspondent Professor Dennis Brooke takes a look at a small-screen thriller in rebellion against surveillance state oppression today, Prime Target.
It was in this city that Sir Isaac Newton started a revolution in mathematics.
Newton was fond of it.
Is there something you'd like to share, Mr. Brooke?
Everyone tells me you're brilliant.
You're looking for sequences in prime numbers.
What if the numbers didn't behave the way we assumed? What if we're not in control?
You need to drop this now.
Someone is watching me, following me. Who are you?
People are paying attention to you. Your work is the cornerstone to all digital security. Bank accounts, defense systems, government records. Do you know how valuable, how dangerous you become? Hey, I want to help you.
I don't need help.
Yes, you do.
If someone built a key that could pick every digital lock in the world, we're talking chaos on a global scale. Now, there are others who want that key.
If we can't stop this weapon from being created, we have to control it.
Neutralize target.
Let's burn them all to hell.
This is Bro on the Global Television Beat, Breaking Glass. Today's episode, Prime Target, resisting surveillance while also privacy washing. Prime Target is an interesting amalgam of rebellion and conformity. The series, which makes great use of Cambridge and its environs, follows the trials and tribulations of all things, a math genius, a graduate student, Edward Brooks, who constructs complex equations in his head and notebooks the way most people jot down to-do lists. The first episodes of the 8-part series, though not skimping on the spy story aspect with murders aplenty, also refuses to skimp on the intellectual and abstract challenge surrounding these constructions, and so manages to do something most series wouldn't even dare to attempt. It makes math sexy. Brooks' abstract obsession with prime numbers, though, has a real-world application. These equations are the key to an algorithm that can unlock global security and surveillance state secrets, rendering cybersecurity obsolete. He is pursued in his quest by an offshoot of the American National Security Agency that is in league with a private company, Axion, which protects the transactions of the world's banks. Brooks claims to be above these concerns and only interested in the abstract formula, but a rogue NSA agent, Taylor Sanders, is along to snap him out of his comfortable illusion and attempt to both keep him alive and keep his secret from falling into the wrong hands, which in this case are those of the NSA. Enter the most nefarious figure in the series, the ruthless NSA higher-up Andrew Carter, with the well-tailored suit and appearance of bureaucratic efficiency, even as he blithely orders a series of murders. Makes one recall in fiction the CIA agent in Graham Greene's The Quiet American, and in reality, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan in the last U.S. administration, whose exquisitely made-up compassion rationalized a genocide and helped put the world on the brink of a nuclear confrontation. Besides the calculations at one point filling the wall-to-wall whiteboard of a sealed room, the series as a spy series suggests that nothing and no one is to be trusted as one associate after another betrays the duo. There's a violent Baghdad interlude and a suspenseful chase in the underground channel between France and England as Edward attempts to retrieve a hieroglyph that decodes the formula solved originally so many centuries ago in the flowering of Arab civilization. One of the high points is in the penultimate episode, where Edward's abstract calculations are put into effect and instead of being used for national gain, are used to help him and Taylor escape the clutches of the security state. There will be a second season, and one of the best parts of the series is how it resolves the major issues of this first season, some involving a Cambridge dean played by Stephen Ray, while then moving the series into a different genre for season 2. Instead of simply spending the last few episodes as an extended tease for the next season, as so many series do. The spy story in the second season will transmute into a fugitive on the run narrative, as Edward attempts to keep his secret out of the hands of the U.S. security state, who assured him that given the option to crack open global security systems, they would do nothing with it. The second season then will follow a sometimes almost erased trail in television of the outsider hounded and pursued by government agencies that began resplendently with The Fugitive, and then more furtively in shorter-lived series such as Coronet Blue and Nowhere Man. It's a grand, if now almost forgotten, or rather squelched, tradition. A question: why would the global corporation Apple sponsor a series which is so blatantly anti-corporate and anti-surveillance? There are a few answers. One is that very important to Apple production is its deal with Richard Flepper, the former head of HBO. Flepper left HBO when AT&T bought Warner's and ordered the pay-per-view cable to become more popular. Indeed, while still pursuing quality productions like The White Lotus, the company now has more of a 70s-style movie blockbuster mentality with the gangster series The Penguin and the prequel to Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon. This opens up Apple to become the new HBO with more outside and prestigious fare, such as Prime Target, whose title suggests it is a combination of intellectualism and intrigue. Besides the branding, though, there's also Apple's advertising appeal in terms of its devices. Its guarantee that its iPhone, Mac, and iPad operate within an impregnable universe that keeps its users free of hackers and outside surveillance. What they don't make so salient, of course, is that behind the wall, users are not free of Apple's own spying on them and using their data, to the point where this year the company paid $95 million to settle a court case alleging it was listening to its users without their permission. So Apple, too, is part of the corporate and state surveillance network which this series rails against. The final greenwashing point is that Apple's sponsorship of this series suggests the company itself is free of military-industrial interference. In fact, the company's fortunes are, at least in the past, intimately bound up with the Defense Department. One of Apple's signature inventions, Siri, the voice that talks to us and that all of us talk back to, was funded and created by the ominous-sounding DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, mocked by the Lost creators as the insidious Dharma Initiative. As of 2010, DARPA was still receiving half of the profits from the product. In fact, the U.S. military was the institution that pioneered and took the investment risks for many of the inventions that resulted in the line of products that have made Apple one of the 3 most profitable countries in the world. So cheers to Apple TV for investing in Prime Target, but jeers for the privacy and military washing that still sustain the company and contribute to its brand. This is Bro on the Global Television Beat, Breaking Glass.
And Bro will be conducting an online course, Film Noir, Greed, and Corporate Grift, with more details at radicalimagination.info. And coming up next on Arts Express,
Việt Nam đi chung lòng yêu quốc, bước chân dồn vang trên đường ân người xa, cờ in máu chiến.
On the road to Nanning, the supple rope has now been replaced with iron fetters. At every step they jingle as though I wore jade rings. In spite of being a prisoner, accused of being a spy, I move with all the dignity of an ancient government official. Hi, this is Jack Shalom. This week marks the convergence of a number of important dates. May Day, May 1st, of course, the end of National Poetry Month, April 30th, and also the 50th anniversary of the fall of Saigon, which was also on April 30th, 1975. So what better way to celebrate them all at once than with the poetry of Ho Chi Minh? And indeed, we opened the segment today with a reading of a poem of Ho's while he was in prison in China. He was arrested as a spy in August 1942 by the Kuomintang and put into a series of Chinese prisons enduring harsh conditions. I'll be reading more of those prison poems, but first a little bit about Ho Chi Minh. Ho's name at birth was Nguyen Sinh Kung, but he took on many names during his lifetime. He was born in 1890 to a local rural magistrate in the village of Kim Lien in central Vietnam, and went to a French high school for the gifted in Hue, though he left before graduation. Ho began his trajectory as a revolutionary leader in an unusual way. At the age of 21, he left Vietnam and didn't return back to his home country until 30 years later, in 1941. And during that time, he traveled, worked, and lived in France, England, the Soviet Union, Hong Kong, China, the United States, and was a leader in building revolutionary organizations, founding several communist parties, while at the same time calling wider public attention to the struggle of his people for independence from the French colonizers. In 1932, he traveled to Moscow, where he spent much of the next 7 years studying and teaching at the Lenin Institute. He returned to China in 1938 and served as an advisor to the Chinese Communist Armed Forces during the Second Sino-Japanese War. Well, in January 1941, Ho entered Vietnam for the first time in 30 years and formed the Viet Minh to take on the Japanese and French. But in 1942, while he was on what was supposed to be a 5 or 6 week trip to China under an assumed name to meet with Chinese Communist Party officials, Ho was arrested by the Chinese national government as a spy and imprisoned for 2 years at the unlikely age of 52. When he was released, he returned to Vietnam and went on shortly to become the president of the newly declared Democratic Republic of Vietnam. And under his leadership, the Vietnamese people defeated the Japanese, the French, and of course the United States. Although Ho died in 1969 at the age of 79 and did not live to see the reunification of Vietnam, the fall of Saigon in 1975 was a clear vindication and consequence of Ho's leadership. But it was back in those Chinese prisons in 1942 and 1943 where Ho wrote most of his poetry. His guards would not allow him to write in his native Vietnamese, so he wrote in the more formal Mandarin that could be understood by his jailers. This was not a problem for Ho, as he could speak and read at least 5 languages, including Vietnamese, Chinese, French, English, and Russian. He wrote over 100 short poems in prison, mostly in quatrain form, and they've been translated by several English translators, including Eileen Palmer, Timothy Allen, and the poet Kenneth Rexroth. So now I'll be reading a short selection of the prison poems by Ho Chi Minh, with one additional later poem from 1965. Moonlight. For prisoners, there is no alcohol nor flowers, but the night is so lovely, how can we celebrate it? I go to the air hole and stare up at the moon, and through the air hole, the moon smiles at the poet. At the Political Bureau of the 4th Zone of Resistance. I have traveled the 13 districts of Guangxi Province and tasted the pleasures of 18 different prisons. What crime have I committed? I keep on asking. The crime of being devoted to my people. Visiting the husband in prison. The bars separate them. The husband stands here. On the other side, the wife stays over there. So close yet so far apart is the pair. A deep gorge between them lies. The message that their lips try to impart is expressed by their eyes. Before a word is spoken, tears start. Seeing their distress, my heart cries. On reading Anthology of 1,000 Poets. The ancients used to like to sing about natural beauty, snow and flowers, moon and wind, mists, mountains and rivers. Today we should make poems including iron and steel, and the poet also should know to lead an attack. 4 months have passed. A day in prison, outside 1,000 years are equal, so thought the ancient seers. It seems that 4 months of this subhuman life have aged me more than 10 years of outside strife. Indeed, for 4 months, just a little food I had. For 4 months, sleepless, I lay awake. For 4 months in self-same clothes I was clad. For 4 months, not a single bath I could take. And so, I even had to part with a tooth. My hair turned gray, forsooth. Scabies played havoc with my body, a dark, hungry demon. That's me, fortunately. Stubborn am I persevere. Not even a little will I yield. Though my suffering may be severe, an unflinching spirit is my shield. Upheaval in Vietnam. Death rather than certitude, a revolt has broken out. In Vietnam, flags of insurrection fly. I feel so sad I could cry. I wish I were free and could take part in enemy's rout. In order to pass the time, we learn to play chess. Pawns and knights are arrayed in full harness. If you move fast in attack and defense, you will succeed. If you are nimble and agile, you won't have to concede. Both sides are engaged in unrelenting warfare. Victorious will be one, the other will lose the game. Advance and retreat, plan your strategy with care. Win, and as a great commander, you will win acclaim. Autumn night. In front of the gate, the guard stands with his rifle. Above, untidy clouds are carrying away the moon. The bedbugs are swarming round like army tanks on maneuvers, while the mosquitoes form squadrons attacking like fighter planes. My heart travels 1,000 li towards my native land. My dream intertwines with the sadness like a skein of 1,000 threads. Innocent, I have endured a whole year in prison. Using my tears for ink, I turn my thoughts into verses. Advice to myself. Without the desolation of winter and its chill, the warm splendor of the spring could there never be. Calamities harden me, they temper me. Like steel I have become, ready my purpose to fulfill. New Year greetings, spring 1965. Last year we had brilliant success. This year greater victories will be won. For the sake of independence, in order to be free, fight on till the Americans and their puppets are overthrown. Fight on, compatriots, forward, fight on. A happy spring will it be when once again North and South become one. Good days coming. Everything changes. The wheel of the law turns without pause. After the rain, good weather. In the wink of an eye, the universe throws off its muddy clothes. For 10,000 miles, the landscape spreads out like a beautiful brocade. Gentle sunshine, light breezes, smiling flowers hang in the trees amongst the sparkling leaves. All the birds sing at once. Men and animals rise up reborn. What could be more natural? After sorrow comes happiness. You've been listening to a reading of some of the prison poems by Ho Chi Minh. This is Jack Shalom for Arts Express with host Prairie Miller.
And that's all we have time for today on Arts Express, Expression in the Arts. And if you'd like to express yourself too, you can write to us at theradiogoddess@gmail.com. Until next time, this is Prairie Miller leaving the station.